Hey everybody, it's me again, Silent Joker with another video playing Rainbow Six Siege again. I had a nice run at this, but what I wanted to talk about was earlier today I was teaching, or I taught a couple kids a little history lesson about World War II that most history teachers, like in high school, don't really focus on, which is a little sad at that because it is a significant event in history. That being said, it was the Doolittle raid. Doolittle raid. And what happened was during World War II, before we full fledged got into the war, 1941, December 7th, Japan bombs Pearl Harbor, as everyone knows, destroys a lot of ships, kills a lot of people, and all of that. Now, a lot of people, a lot of kids assume that the initial response to Pearl Harbor is us dropping the atomic bombs on Japan, which is not true, because after Pearl Harbor we entered the war against Japan and the atomic bombs weren't dropped until 1945. The initial response to Pearl Harbor was the Doolittle raid, and that happened 6 months after Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. And now why this is actually important is because the Doolittle raid did something incredible. Jimmy Doolittle, what he decided to do, in which everyone volunteered to do this, was he decided to take around 10 or 11 B-50, B-25 bombers and launch them from an aircraft carrier. Now, that's amazing due to the fact that B-25s have never been launched from an aircraft carrier at all, due to the fact that the runway on the aircraft carrier is too short for the 25 to be launched. The B-25s needed at least 1,500 feet of runway to make a clear launch with minimum weight. And the aircraft carrier at the time had roughly 800 feet of runway, maybe even less. So they had to figure a way to launch the bombers from almost half the runway they needed, which was incredible because Doolittle actually did it. He was able to launch all 10 or 11 bombers from the aircraft carrier. And the interesting thing is that everybody that participated in the Doolittle raid, the crews of the aircraft, they all volunteered. It wasn't just, alright, look, we're going to do this, we need you to do that. Due to the fact that the runway was shorter on the aircraft carrier, they needed volunteers because they couldn't force anybody to do it. And all 10 or 11 planes launched. And the thing is, with the raid, the reason for it, not only was it to retaliate from the Pearl Harbor attack, is to show Japan, because at the time Japan thought it was invincible. It's Japan's an island, but there's also smaller islands surrounding Japan, so it's harder to get inland to the main island. So the raid not only was like, alright, you bomb Pearl Harbor, we're gonna get you, it was also to show you bomb Pearl Harbor, we're gonna go straight to your house and get you. Not just some random place that you control, straight to Tokyo. They went straight to Tokyo and bombed it, which was crazy. But the problem with the raid was Doolittle, everybody knew this, they only had enough fuel to take off, and that was it. Due to the fact on how short the runway was, they needed to cut weight, so they only brought enough fuel to make the bombing run. That was it. And the plan was to land in China, because at the time China was our allies. We were gonna land in China, refuel, and just come back home. but I'm a firm believer plans never survive initial contact, and that's exactly what happened. They had to launch the raid earlier than expected due to the fact that the Japanese fleet caught on, so they launched a little earlier, and because of that, we still accomplished the mission, but roughly, I think 3 bombers got shot down, or I think 1 legit got shot down, 2 landed, 1 in Japan occupied territory, and 1 in Russia. And the crew in Russia, though, because Russia was a bunch of assholes, they took the crew and sent them to the Gulag, which is basically a prison. And we don't know if that crew ever got released or not. But they made it. They did the impossible and flew bombers off of an aircraft carrier, which has never been done, straight to Tokyo, which has also never been done, bombed it, and the majority of the crew survived, which was awesome. And a lot of times, people don't know that because they assume that, once again, the initial response was the atomic bombs, which is not true. The atomic bombs actually ended the war between the US and Japan, and it happened in 1945. And we actually gave them warning that if they didn't stop, we would bomb them. It was kind of crazy. I learned this a couple years ago, but that was really interesting because while I was in high school, history teacher, she was like, what was the initial response? And everyone assumed the atomic bombs, and I was the only one who didn't assume that. And I actually told the teacher about the raid, and she had no idea, which was kind of weird in a sense. And I went to lunch, she looks it up, come back to lunch, she tells me, she's like, oh, you're right. It's pretty cool. When I look in the history books, they show the Doolittle raid only as a footnote, and teachers tend not to actually use the footnotes for some odd reason. They go what's in big bold letters, they'll tell you that, but sometimes the most interesting facts is what's left off into the side. And that. So it was pretty interesting just telling people about the Doolittle raid, which was impressive in its own. And the things that people do to accomplish their task, and everyone that do the impossible but somehow still do it. It's just crazy. It was really interesting. But yeah, I told him about the Doolittle raid. I told him how I met Mary Feik, which was interesting too. For those who don't know, Mary Feik is actually the first woman engineer in research and development in the Air Technical Service Command's Engineering Division. She was a test pilot for certain aircrafts during World War II. She also helped teach or show crew members, like crew chiefs and mechanics, how to fix engines during World War II. She was a pretty boss chick. She did a lot during World War II. I actually met her a couple years ago, and it was interesting talking to her and how she contributed towards World War II. Learning Doolittle history is an interesting subject, and it's really nice. So, hope you enjoy this. I'm just gonna let you go. If you want to learn anything else, want me to talk about any other historical facts or anything else interesting that happened in history, some impossible task that happened or was that somebody did that was faced, or they just randomly did something impossible to prove a point or just contributed in any way, just let me know in the comments. Hope you liked, like, subscribe, share, do all that good stuff, and I'll see you in another video, probably with a different fact or history lesson. Alright, that's it.